Why was she standing so still while they laughed at her? That's what the other officers noticed first. Not fear, not anger, just stillness. The kind that makes your skin prickle because you know something's wrong but you can't name it yet. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen stood in the briefing room at Forward Operating Base Sentinel, 23 years old, 5'4", arms crossed loosely at her sides. She wore standard issue fatigues, hair pulled back tight, face clean of expression. Around her, 4 male officers filled the space with noise. Captain Brennan, broad-shouldered and loud. Lieutenant Voss, smirking from the corner. Sergeant First Class Dalton, arms folded like he owned the room. And Corporal Hayes, young and eager to impress. They'd been talking over her for 10 minutes. Not to her, over her, through her, like she was furniture with a pulse. "Look, I'm just saying," Brennan said, leaning back in his chair. "We don't need a babysitter on this op, especially not one who barely clears regulation height." Voss chuckled. "She probably can't even reach the door handle on the Humvee." Hayes laughed too loud, trying too hard. Maya didn't react, didn't shift her weight, didn't bite, she just waited. Because she'd learned something a long time ago. Patience isn't weakness, it's ammunition, and she was loading every round they gave her. The briefing was supposed to start at 800. It was now 8:17. The commanding officer, Colonel Mercer, still hadn't arrived. The room hummed with air conditioning and arrogance. Maya had been assigned to this unit 3 days ago. Tactical liaison, translation, the woman they sent when they needed someone who could read terrain maps and speak Pashto without an accent. She was good at her job, better than good. But that didn't matter here. Not yet. Brennan stood up, walked past her, made a show of looking down at the top of her head. "You sure you're tall enough to see over the dash? We can get you a booster seat." Silence from Maya. Dalton joined in. "Maybe she's just here to take notes. You know, admin stuff." "Or make coffee," Voss added. Hayes was about to say something else when the door opened. Colonel Mercer walked in. 60s, gray at the temples, eyes like broken glass. He didn't smile, didn't greet anyone, just moved to the front of the room and slapped a folder onto the table. "Sit down," he said. They sat. Maya remained standing near the wall. She wasn't part of the inner circle yet, wasn't invited to the table. That was fine. She could hear just as well from here. Mercer opened the folder. "We have confirmation. High-value target. Code name, Scorpion. Last seen moving through the Korangal Valley, heading toward the Pakistani border. Intel suggests he's coordinating with local militia to stage an attack on supply routes." Brennan leaned forward. "When do we move?" 2200 hours. You'll have air support on standby, but this is a ground operation. Fast in, fast out. No margin for error." Voss glanced at Maya, then back at Mercer. "Sir, with all due respect, is she coming with us?" Mercer didn't look up. "Staff Sergeant Chen will be your primary navigator and interpreter. You'll need both." Brennan exhaled hard through his nose. "Sir, we've run ops in that valley before. We don't need." "You've run ops," Mercer interrupted, voice flat, "and you've gotten lost, twice. Once for 6 hours, once overnight. Chen has mapped that terrain. She speaks the language, she goes." The room went quiet. Maya didn't smile, didn't gloat, just stood there absorbing it. Brennan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Understood, sir." Mercer finally looked at Maya. "You good with this?" "Yes, sir." "Good, wheels up at 2100, dismissed." They filed out. Brennan first, shoulders stiff. Voss second, shaking his head. Dalton and Hayes followed. Maya waited until they were gone, then stepped forward. Mercer was still at the table, reorganizing papers. "Sir," she said quietly. He glanced up. "They're not going to listen to me out there." Mercer studied her for a long moment, then he closed the folder. "Then make them." She nodded once, understood. As she walked out into the harsh Afghan sun, the heat hit her like a wall. Dust swirled across the compound. Humvees lined up near the motor pool. Soldiers moved with purpose, prepping gear, checking weapons, tightening straps. Maya headed toward the armory. She had her own prep to do. But as she walked, she felt it. That familiar weight in her chest. The one that came from knowing you had to prove yourself before anyone would let you do your job. She'd felt it in training, felt it at her last post, felt it every time she walked into a room full of men who looked at her and saw limitation instead of capability. She wasn't angry about it anymore. Anger was expensive, it cost focus. What she felt now was something colder, sharper. Determination. Because tonight, in the dark in the mountains, when the bullets started flying and the comms went dead, and someone had to make a call that could save lives or end them, they were going to need her. And when that moment came, she wasn't going to ask for permission. She was just going to act. The helicopter blades chopped the air into rhythm and violence. Inside the Black Hawk, 6 soldiers sat in 2 rows, knees almost touching, faces lit by red interior lights. The noise was too loud for conversation, so they sat in silence, weapons between their legs, helmets low, eyes forward or closed. Maya sat near the rear next to the door gunner. She'd strapped in without help, checked her gear twice, and now she was still, hands resting on her rifle, breathing steady. Across from her, Brennan stared at nothing. Voss had his eyes closed, lips moving slightly, praying maybe, or rehearsing. Dalton was checking his sidearm for the 3rd time. Hayes kept glancing at Maya, then looking away. The crew chief held up 5 fingers. 5 minutes. Maya's stomach tightened. Not fear. Anticipation. The kind you feel before a test you've studied for. She knew this terrain. She'd spent weeks studying satellite images, topographical maps, tribal migration patterns. She knew which ridges caught the wind, which valleys funneled sound, which routes the locals used to avoid coalition patrols. She knew more than any of them. But knowledge without respect was just noise. The helicopter banked left. The gunner leaned out, scanning the dark landscape below. Mountains rose like broken teeth. No lights. No roads, just rock and shadow and silence. The crew chief tapped Brennan's shoulder and pointed down. Brennan nodded, then turned to the others. He made hand signals, prepared a fast rope, 30 seconds. Maya stood with the others, gripping the overhead strap. Her heart rate stayed even. She'd done this before. Drop into hostile territory, move fast, stay low, trust your training. The helicopter hovered. The door slid open. Wind roared in. One by one they dropped. Brennan first, then Voss, Dalton, Hayes, then Maya. She gripped the rope, swung out into the void, and slid down into the darkness. Her boots hit dirt. She rolled, came up in a crouch, weapon raised, scanning left and right. The others were already moving, forming a perimeter. The helicopter pulled up and away, rotors fatting into the distance. And then it was quiet. Too quiet. Brennan signaled, move out, standard formation, Dalton on point, Voss and Hayes on the flanks, Brennan in the middle, Maya at the rear. Always at the rear. They moved through a dry riverbed, boots crunching on stone. The moon was a sliver, barely enough light to see shapes. They relied on night vision, green-tinted world, everything flat and strange. After 20 minutes, Dalton raised a fist. Stop. They froze. He pointed ahead, a structure, low square mud brick, abandoned maybe, or a lookout. Brennan moved up beside him, scanned with his scope. Then he turned to Maya. Chen, what's that building? She moved forward, crouched low, studied it through her own optic. Old sheep shelter, she said quietly. Locals used to rotate flocks through here in spring. Hasn't been used in 2 years. You sure? Yes, sir. He hesitated, then nodded. We go around it, wide berth. They adjusted course, moved along the ridge instead of through the valley. It added 10 minutes, but it was safer. Maya noted the decision. He'd listened, small, but it was something. They continued deeper into the mountains. An hour passed, then two. The air grew colder, the terrain rougher. At one point, Voss slipped on loose shale, caught himself, cursed under his breath. Brennan called for a halt. They took a knee in a cluster of boulders, checked their bearings. "Chen," Brennan said, voice low, "where are we?" She pulled out her map, checked her compass, looked at the ridgeline. 2 clicks from the target zone. We're on course. How much further to the compound? 30 minutes, maybe less. He nodded. Good. They rested for 5 minutes, drank water, adjusted straps. Hayes whispered something to Dalton. Dalton didn't respond. Maya stayed separate, not isolated, just watchful. Then Voss spoke, quiet, almost reluctant. "Hey, Chen." She looked at him. "You really speak Pashto?" "Fluently." "Where'd you learn?" "Defense Language Institute, 18 months, then in-country immersion." He nodded slowly. "That's actually impressive." She didn't respond, didn't need to. Brennan stood. "Let's move." They continued. The valley narrowed, the walls closed in. Maya could feel it, the compression, the way sound would bounce here, the way an ambush could come from above and you'd never see it until too late. She moved up beside Brennan. "Sir?" He glanced at her. "This choke point, it's a kill zone. We should move to higher ground." He looked ahead, then at the ridge, then back at her. "That'll take longer." "Yes, sir, but if they're watching this route." "We're on a timeline, Chen." "I understand, sir, but—" "We stay on course." She held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. "Copy." They moved forward into the narrow pass. And that's when the world exploded. The first shot cracked from somewhere above. Brennan dropped flat, so did the others. Maya hit the dirt, rolled behind a boulder, brought her rifle up. More shots, automatic fire, sparks flying off rocks, dust kicking up in bursts. "Contact, contact," Dalton was shouting into his radio. "We're taking fire from the ridge, northeast." Brennan was on his stomach trying to locate the shooter. "I can't see him." Voss fired blind, 3-round burst into the darkness. "Where the hell is he?" Hayes was breathing too fast, too loud, panic creeping in. Maya scanned the ridge through her scope. Movement, faint, 40 meters up, muzzle flash, there. "Northeast ridge," she said, voice calm and clear. 40 meters, single shooter, AK pattern, he's moving after every burst. Brennan looked at her. "You see him?" "Yes, sir." "Can you hit him?" She adjusted her position, steadied her breathing, calculated wind, distance, elevation. The shooter moved again. She tracked him. One breath, two. She fired. The shooting stopped. Silence. Brennan stared at her. "Did you?" "He's down." They waited 10 seconds, 20. No more shots. Dalton crawled over. "How the hell did you make that shot in the dark?" Maya didn't answer. She was already scanning for secondary threats. "We need to move. If there's one, there could be more." Brennan got to his feet, cautious, weapon raised. "Chen's right, let's go, fast." They moved quickly now, no more hesitation. Brennan took her advice without question. When she said go left, they went left. When she said hold, they held. They reached the compound 20 minutes later. Low structure, concrete walls, flat roof, 2 armed men outside. Militia, not trained, just locals with rifles. Brennan signaled. Dalton and Voss moved right. Hayes stayed center with Brennan. Maya went left. They closed in from 3 sides. The guards didn't see them until it was too late. Brennan gave the command, "Drop your weapons, hands up now." The guards spun, startled. One raised his rifle. Maya fired, center mass. He went down. The other dropped his weapon, hands in the air, shouting in Pashto. Maya moved forward, weapon trained on him. "On your knees, hands behind your head." He complied, terrified. Brennan and the others swept the compound. Room by room, Clear, clear, clear. Then Dalton called out, "We got him, target secured." Inside, sitting on the floor with his hands zip-tied, was Scorpion, older than his file photo, thinner, but it was him. Brennan keyed his radio. "Overwatch, this is Alpha Team, target secure, requesting extraction." "Copy Alpha, bird inbound, ETA 12 minutes. They set up a perimeter, watched the surrounding area, waited. Maya stayed near the entrance, scanning the dark. Hayes approached her, quiet, almost shy. "That shot you made, on the ridge, that was," he trailed off. She glanced at him. "That was incredible," he finished. She didn't smile, just training. No, that was more than training. She turned back to her sector, but she felt it, the shift, the change in how he looked at her, not like a liability, like a soldier. The helicopter arrived, loud and fast. They loaded Scorpion, secured him, and climbed aboard. As they lifted off, Maya looked down at the compound, at the mountains, at the valley they'd just survived. Brennan sat across from her. He caught her eye. Then he nodded, just once. Small, but it meant everything. Because sometimes respect doesn't come from words. It comes from action. They didn't talk about it on the flight back. No celebration, no backslapping, just the steady thrum of helicopter blades and 6 exhausted soldiers trying to stay awake. Maya sat with her rifle across her lap, head tilted back against the vibrating metal wall. Her body ached, her ears rang, but her mind was clear. They'd completed the mission, extracted the target, no casualties, clean operation. And she'd proven something, not to herself. She already knew what she was capable of, but to them. When they landed at Fob Sentinel, the rotors still spinning down, Brennan was the first to step off. He waited for the others. When Maya jumped down, he fell into step beside her. "Chen." "Sir." "That call you made, about the kill zone." She kept walking, didn't look at him. "You were right," he said. "I should have listened." She stopped, turned to face him. He met her eyes. No excuses, no deflection, just accountability. "Won't happen again," he added. She nodded, understood. They walked toward the operations center. The sun was just starting to rise, pink and gold spreading across the horizon. The base was waking up, soldiers moving between buildings, engines starting, voices calling out. Inside the operations center, Colonel Mercer was waiting. He didn't smile, didn't congratulate them, just asked for the debrief. Brennan delivered it, factual, precise. When he got to the part about the ambush, he paused. Staff Sergeant Chen neutralized the shooter, single shot, low visibility, 40 meters uphill. Mercer looked at Maya. "Good work." "Thank you, sir." "You'll submit a full report by 1400 hours." "Yes, sir." "Dismissed." They filed out. The team split up. Voss headed toward the mess hall. Dalton went to check his gear. Hayes disappeared toward the barracks. Maya walked alone toward the showers. She needed to wash off the dust, the sweat, the residue of adrenaline. She was halfway there when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. It was Brennan again. He looked tired, older than he had yesterday. "I owe you an apology," he said. She waited. "What we said in that briefing room, before the mission, that was out of line." "It was," she agreed. "I didn't think you could handle it. I was wrong." She studied him, not with anger, just clarity. "You didn't know me," she said. "I get that, but you didn't try to know me either. You just assumed." He nodded. "Yeah, I did." "Don't do it again." "I won't." They stood there for a moment, the rising sun casting long shadows across the gravel. "For what it's worth," Brennan added, "you're one of the best shooters I've seen, and I've been doing this for 12 years. She didn't smile, didn't soften, just acknowledged it. "Appreciate that, sir." He extended his hand. She shook it, firm, equal. Then he walked away. Maya continued toward the showers. She stripped off her gear, stepped under the cold water, let it wash everything away. The dust, the tension, the weight of having to prove herself one more time. But as the water ran over her face, she realized something. She wasn't angry anymore, wasn't bitter. Because she'd done what she came to do. Not by demanding respect, by earning it. And that was the only kind that lasted. 3 weeks later, Maya sat in the briefing room again. Same room, same table, same air conditioning humming in the background. But everything else had changed. This time she wasn't standing against the wall. She was sitting at the table, right next to Brennan, across from Voss and Dalton. Hayes sat at the far end taking notes. Colonel Mercer stood at the front briefing them on a new operation. Reconnaissance, deep territory, high risk. "Chen," Mercer said, looking at her, "you'll lead navigation and tactical planning." "Yes, sir." No hesitation from the others, no sideways glances, no muttered comments. Just acceptance. After the briefing ended, they prepped gear together. Brennan asked for her input on route planning. Voss checked in about language protocols. Dalton requested her assessment on terrain hazards. They'd become a team, not because someone ordered it, but because they'd bled together, fought together, survived together. And Maya had shown them something they hadn't been able to see before. That strength doesn't announce itself. It just shows up, does the work, and lets the results speak. Later that evening, Maya stood outside the operations tent, watching the sunset. The mountains in the distance looked softer in this light, less hostile, just ancient and indifferent. Hayes walked up beside her, hands in his pockets. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "How'd you stay so calm? When they were talking down to you, when they didn't believe in you, how'd you not lose it?" She thought about it, really thought about it. "Because losing it wouldn't have changed their minds," she said. "Only results change minds." He nodded slowly. "That's hard, though, to wait like that." "Yeah, it is." "Was it worth it?" She looked at him, young, eager, still learning what this life demanded. "Every time," she said. He smiled a little. "I'm glad you're on our team." "Me too." He walked away. Maya stayed a little longer, watching the light fade, feeling the cool evening air settle over the base. She thought about her father, a Marine, retired now, living in California with her mother. He told her once before she deployed, "They're going to test you every day, in ways big and small, and you're going to want to fight back. But here's the thing. The strongest response isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the quietest. Do your job, do it better than anyone else, and let that be your answer." She'd carried those words with her, through training, through deployment, through every room where she was the only woman, every mission where she had to prove herself before anyone would listen. And she'd learned something her father didn't say, couldn't say, because he'd never had to live it. That silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.